Gang, gang, y'all, what's goody? What's goody? This is the visualization of the YMDR podcast, y'all. What's good with y'all, man? Hopefully, y'all tapping in okay. Controversy in the building. Devani in the building, if y'all know me. YMDR Con in the building, you feel me? Y'all, we are just testing the ropes to see what we can kind of do here with this stuff. Didn't really know what I was gonna try to do with this whole thing, so gotta bear with a brother on this. Didn't necessarily know how I was gonna be able to put this into play like that, you know what I'm saying? So we here now. We just seeing how it works out, you know what I'm saying? And shoot, we just trying to get up into it, you know what I'm saying? So let's tap in, let's tap in. So shoot, y'all. Hey, what I do want to talk about, or at least just put out there, is something to kind of start off the podcast with, at least the visual, podcast version. And shoot, man. Um, just possibly if y'all don't, if y'all don't know me like that, obviously, I give y'all my centered introduction. Um, my name is obviously Devani um, Menendez. You feel me? So Devani Menendez. I go by Controversy as an artist name, and then I'm kind of like a multi creative person. You know what I'm saying? So I create a lot of different stuff. So I'm multi talented, as we would say. But yeah, ultimately, I've been in Naptown for a pretty long time. Just been chilling, kind of creating my own kind of stuff, as time has kind of progressed. And, you know, just been building on what I would say was a brand that I sort of created um, when I was in the peak of just different situations. You know what I mean? I made it when I was kind of young, fairly, because 2013 ain't too far from how I'm 30 years old now. So pretty long while back to be tapping in with something that you just created and kind of put out there. So people did not know much about what it was, especially because just certain people who rocked with me didn't really know where it would go or what it was. Yeah, definitely just was something that had to really be built on, in the midst of it all. So it was definitely a thing that took some time, regulation, all that kind of stuff. So it took its time, and shoot, man, it grew, and I just built it on, the identity of what I needed it to be, man. And here we are, creating it to be what it is. Um, so yeah, I've been in Naptown pretty long time. Like I've been here pretty much all my life. Pretty much, I've only been to Texas when I was a child, and I only been to New Jersey. You know what I'm saying? When I was kind of a little older, because I had a situation. I had to bury my auntie because my auntie had passed away. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, all in all, y'all, I have just been a person who usually, as far as that goes, just, been an artist and just, staying out the way and just being true to what my artistry is. You know what I'm saying? So, as far as the introduction, I mean, that's all I could really tell y'all in the midst of that concept. We are going to try to just get into a topic, you know what I'm saying? Just one that kind of comes to mind about just different things. And shoot, y'all, I want to keep the topics a little current, so I'm going to try to use relationships in this topic and give y'all something to think about as far as it goes that. So I will just talk about the topic that kind of entails on, where do people claim, or how do people, you know, why does generation kind of why has the generation basically dumbed down their ability to be in a relationship? A little bit of a long title. Not really a title at all. Just said that just said that from in a contrast cuz that's what came to mind. But all in all, y'all, I mean, shoot, what I could say for that or what comes to my mind about it is a lot of that is coming from this generation right now because a lot of them believe and just think that predominantly everybody does not have genuine motives. Um, a lot of these not genuine motives are coming from the reality of people who think that they need to be messing around with certain people at a certain age and then kind of settling down when they're more or less in their 30s. And brothers and sisters, just being honest with all of y'all, when you really point the construct to, that whole idea, you know, what it's really communicating, whether we know it or not, is that we almost won't be able to know how to really be in a relationship when we get to our so-called age of choice that we want to have a serious relationship in. Because I mean, from the 20s to the 30s ish, some people believe that that's what they need to do when it's between those time frames. They need to be messing around with multiple people simply because, you know, when you mess around with multiple people in that time of age, it doesn't seem like it's really that bad of a thing to do. You know what I'm saying? Whereas to in many ways, it can feel like it's pretty out of the way to be wanting to do something like that because at the end of the day, you know, where you lose a lot of ground with just being somebody, I guess, who kind of does that sort of stuff is just you lose ground on the idea of just what type of perception, you want to keep about yourself. You know what I mean? And I've just learned over time, that there's a lot of people who don't really take those type of perceptions into play at all. They don't take those perceptions into the idea of what they're doing to them, or how they're doing what they're doing to them. So it kind of fades into the wind, on people's realities, and don't really think about, you know, does this help the greater cause of what I'm going to become if multiple people notice about me and if they know that the only thing that I've done to myself are those particular things, you know what I mean? So, I mean, our generation, as far as that goes, has kind of led this point to say, oh, well, if we all are on, was it hookup culture status, then that just means that we all need to be hookup culture people and we all need to just be on fake stuff when it comes to relationships. And some people, because they don't want to get hurt, they rather just say to themselves, well, I'm not going to be on fake relationships like all the rest of these people are. So I'm just going to say I'd rather be single until I find the right person. And sometimes what we don't even realize half the time, y'all, I ain't even gonna lie to y'all. Sometimes what we don't even realize is the right person could have easily been somebody that we chose to be involved with that was actually going in a better direction than the person that we chose that was going in the wrong direction. That could have been our better person. But a lot of us do not think ahead of time on that contrast of saying that someone who was like that could have been our better person because we don't really include people who have the betterment of ourselves. You see what I'm saying? So it's like we live in this idea of, oh, we want betterment for ourselves, but we live in a construct of we don't necessarily want it to an extent. You know what I'm saying? So we kind of level it in or level it out to make it seem like we want something like that, but we really don't. And y'all, that kind of, whether we know it or not, like that's actually us pushing ourselves away from the concept of happiness intentionally, because we feel like if we get the happiness that we want and that we dreamed of, or that comes from some fairy tale type of vibe idea, we believe that won't be good enough. But we fail to understand that it's not really a fairy tale if you notice why that whole relationship existed to begin with. Fairy tales are more on the contrast of, they tell you a story, right? And it's a story that is either going to tell you this is how that story went, and at the same time, because it's make believe, it's not going to give you a straight idea path to the whole thing. So a fairy tale, that's why a fairy tale has that idea out there, a happy ending or whatever the case may be, is because it obviously gives you that type of idea, but people have to learn to realize that in real life, when you think of relationships with someone else, that is not going to look like a fairy tale. It won't look like a fairy tale just because you got a good man in the midst of the situation, because good people don't necessarily live in a fairy tale either just because they're good people. Good people just understand the reality of how bad people operate. And because they understand that, what they try to do is reverse the concept of what they're seeing, because they feel like, why would anybody want to be in the same boat of this type of contrast when they don't have to be? You know what I'm saying? Some good people are reflections of literally just people trying to rediscover and redesign what they see from bad people. You know what I mean? Because bad people will make you believe that their bad is all that you have, which is why a lot of people cancel relationships altogether, because they say to themselves, oh, well, everybody's like this, everybody's like that, da 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 da. And it pushes them in a bad spot to not even realize, well, wait, you're only amplifying that everyone is like this because you're not putting anything in your mind that is the opposite of that. Sometimes that's literally the only reason why we can let some people be the 5%ers, whether they're good, and let some people who are negative be the more gaining percenters. You feel me? Because we're looking at the idea from this path of which one is better. We need this one more or we need this one less. When really it's just we need to know how to change our directions, with who we're choosing. Because some people we're choosing are just using that energy to try to destroy us, and then some people understand that that's what some people are doing, and they don't want to do that. They say, hey, I want to change the energy and the vibe and make it where the energy is no longer under this idea that they've created it to be. So all in all, y'all, that's what I could say for the constructs of that topic of, what we're saying with relationships, and, just being kind of putting that out there for that idea is that, y'all, we just have to learn to start choosing different, people to associate with, because those particular people possibly are not just trying to be good people in our lives. They're just trying to change the peripheral because they've seen the peripheral of the negative. And they just want to offer someone the positive peripheral, because a lot of the times the way life works and the way life tries to present itself is there is only a negative force out there, when that's just not how life is. God creates both a good and an evil. It's like a yin and a yang. There's always going to be a good and an evil. If you look in the Bible, it even communicates how you know, you overcome evil with good, because it's almost like God is trying to say that when we bit of the tree of knowledge, that was a tree that was going to both have good and evil, but the way the world has communicated itself, it has tried to say that we just need to live in a world of only evil. Erase the good, but let the evil reign. And we're failing to understand that's not the way the world is supposed to communicate itself, and that's where we're getting this dysfunctional construction from, where people are disregarding people who are good instead of being involved with people who are are good. You know what I'm saying? They get disregarded more than they get appreciated. So, I mean, that's what shoot, y'all. Hey, I just want to thank y'all for tapping in to the podcast. Obviously, y'all, the YMDR podcast on the visual side. I'm very new to. So hopefully you can bear with me in the midst of that situation, because a brother ain't really done too much of that type of stuff to begin with. So, when you try something new, you're always gonna have like your sort of beginning stages. So hey, hopefully y'all can let that be what it is, and just walk through a brother with the path, because I know that when it comes to YMDR podcast, we just trying to create a space of, you know, being able to speak on things and give some real, contrast to stuff, and just bring some real perspectives to what we would say um, podcasting has, because there are some podcasts that I guess give a lot more realistic concepts, but then there's some who don't really give ones that are tangible, being heard from real voices. Sometimes we hear these things from other podcasts who are trying to tell people that they need to be particular ways because of this or because of that. But everyone creates a podcast under their own um, ideologies and under their own perspectives. So, all in all, y'all, I hope y'all tap in and notice that when it comes to YMDR podcast, we're just out here trying to communicate a message that at least can voice the idea that we are um, allowed to speak our minds and voice what we feel, is real about ourselves and what we really genuinely see, when we're um, going through our processes of life. So, hey, this is like the first video, probably like the first season-ish in, what I'm saying? We just going about it slowly but surely. I can't say that it invites people into anything yet. I don't know what it invites people into, especially because, shoot, y'all, crazy how I did this podcast and I'm sick for like, I don't know, I'm just getting over a cold. So, definitely doesn't seem like the right time to visually, what I'm saying, put together a podcast. But at the same time, when you want to get your stuff out there, you want to get something going, you got to start where you got to start. And if that means you got to start with you being a sick brother on the podcast, speaking your mind, being real about some things, hey, the mind doesn't float away. It's because you're sick. At least you got the ability to do that. So that's what came to mind when I did it. I just kept in mind that, hey, y'all, I might be a little out of whack, but all in all, I'm still all right. You know what I'm saying? We still gonna do this. So much love to y'all, man. I thank y'all for tapping in. Um, and I appreciate y'all for looking at the podcast, man. Much love to y'all. Gang, gang. We out here.